Hey guys.
Hi guys.
It's been a half hour talking about poop today.
It's been an interesting week. If I suddenly fall asleep, I apologize. I've had a really long week. It's midterms week. Well, it was midterms week. It's officially over.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which is fantastic.
Plus that it's all done.
And exactly, it's all done. And I'm going to sleep the rest of today.
That is perfectly acceptable.
Yeah.
Very
My
acceptable.
poor body needs the recovery.
Just your brain alone, that's horrible.
Oh my gosh, my brain is fried.
Yeah.
When I was trying to study for my exam this morning, like I was saying, I was looking at my notes and just it was just color on paper. It wasn't words.
I think it's pie chart.
This is at the point where I need to just go to sleep. Yeah.
I'm going to call it quits right here and nap time.
Nap time. But talking about recovery, it's kind of something we're going to talk about today. Mm-hmm. We are going to be talking about heat and cold therapy and how that affects recovery, energy expenditure, things like that.
Yeah.
It's cool.
And Isaac's just missing. We didn't fire him. He's just on vacation.
Yeah, Isaac is on vacation today.
Just to put that out there, because someone's going to ask. It happens.
Guaranteed.
Yeah. What happened to
Absolutely.
Isaac? He's still here. I'll put his name right here as well, so you guys can see it, so you know he's still part of us.
Yes. He's here in spirit.
True story. True story. So.
All right, so let's start with, do you want to start with heat or cold? Hot or cold?
Well, you were talking about the brown fat before we started. Do you want to start there? In case we do lose you and you fall asleep?
That's fair, yes. Let's get my information out first. That's fair. If I just conk out, we're just going to pretend like it didn't happen. All right.
I'll just put a little thingy over her face while she's sleeping. And it didn't really happen. Just don't drool. I can't edit that out. I'm not gonna do it.
We can't edit that out.
Yeah, I don't know how to do that yet. I'm sure there's a way to do it, but I can't.
I'm sure, yeah.
Yep.
So, cold therapy, one of the things that I really wanted to touch on is that, well, you know what? Let's start with, what is cold therapy?
Do you want to answer that?
Yeah.
Okay. So cold therapy, and you see this a lot in athletes. They take those ice baths after a sporting event. And you've probably experienced some form of cold therapy when you put an ice pack on your body or whatever else. The point of cold therapy is to subject your body to a temperature that is below your surface temperature, below your core temperature, in order to get your body to respond. When you think about how it runs through your system, it's going to cause vasoconstriction. So any of the extremities that have any inflammation will contract and then send that blood back to your circulatory system. That's the easiest and the high level overview. And then what happens is you're going to have a hormonal response, which we're going to talk about. You're going to have a mitochondrial response, which we're going to talk about. And then, of course, just the I don't want to go too far. The increase in calories just being wasted by your body to generate heat, because your body wants to regulate that 98.6 core temperature as tightly as it can.
Yep. So, as far as what I really wanted to talk about, so when it comes down to cold therapy, the fat that we have in our body, there's different kinds of fats. A lot of people think it's just, you just carry fat. Well, there's different colors of fat, technically. We have brown fat, there's white fat. Most adults have a mixture of the two, like beige fat. But brown fat there's still a lot of research being done on it, and they're not really sure what causes people to collect brown fat versus white fat or beige fat as of right now. So there's a lot of research being done. But the research that has been done is that brown fat undergoes something called thermogenesis. And so what actually happens is that brown fat, while under cold stress, gives off higher energy expenditures in the forms of heat. And so what ends up happening, kind of on the sciencey side, is that the mitochondria in the brown fat, there's a lot of specific types of receptors in that brown fat that will force protons into the cell, and then the body will try to get rid of those. It'll push it back out in the form of, it'll use energy. So if you know from biology, ATP, it'll use ATP to push those protons back out of the cell, and it forms heat. And so that comes off as heat. So when under excessive amounts of cold stress, brown fat will put off a lot more energy because it's trying to push those protons back out of the cell to form, and then the natural byproduct of that is heat. And so brown fat is very highly known for being able to put off more energy under cold stress versus regular fat that will just create ATP under those same instances. That brown fat actually expends that energy versus making energy, which is pretty cool. So.
Yeah. And then the big thing is, like you said, it is a way to generate heat. So when you think about that from literally a thermogenesis standpoint, from a person's standpoint, what does that do for us?
Now, for that, as far as being able to put off heat, that's going to, well, one, it's going to burn some of the fat molecules or the fat that's collected in your body, because your body is trying to maintain homeostasis. So like you said, maintaining that 98.6. I always want to say like 97.5.
Sounds good.
I don't know why. I don't know why.
Is that one of our stations down here?
I don't know.
It's one by me. Well,
really?
Not by me, but back in New York, yeah.
98.6. I'm going to get that right, I promise. Being able to maintain, yeah. Being able to maintain homeostasis is incredibly important for the body. And in order to do so, your body has to burn energy. And so if you think about jumping into a pool and you start shivering, like that sudden shock of that cold causes your body to start to try to heat itself up. And so you're going to burn energy more if you're trying to get warmer.
And when you think about, that cold exposure, and you think about, a lot of people sit back and like, well, I don't want to be cold, it's not comfortable. There's different degrees of cold exposure, because you can do anything from being out in a pool, obviously not in Texas, like in the fall where the water is maybe 60 degrees. And you see this a lot with people who live by the ocean or by bays. Spring happens, they're out in the water for an hour, and then they're exhausted. The reason why you're exhausted is that energy wasting. You just jumped into a cold water. I mean, maybe it's 60 degrees, maybe it's 70 degrees. All of that is below your core temperature. I mean, unless that water is 98.6 degrees, you are wasting energy. Interesting thing, you can actually get hypothermia in 80-degree water.
Can you now?
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
It's the amount of time that you're there.
Yeah.
So think about it. If you're in there for an hour, hour and a half, you have the potential to get hypothermia, depending on how well you can regulate your core temperature.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. It was an interesting little thing to find. I was surprised by that.
Yeah.
Because you never think about hypothermia in warm water, but yeah, because it's below core temperature.
I mean, that makes sense. Then, too, if you're swimming in like 98.6 degree water, that's like really uncomfortably warm.
You don't want to be in that water.
No thanks.
It's pool water. It's bath water. It's gross.
Yeah. No thanks.
Yeah,
no thanks. But I think that's really neat, though. I mean, the fact that, well, one thing that you had touched earlier on is that, we really don't get that kind of exposure. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we don't get that kind of exposure to, I mean, unless you live in the cold, but all of us are going to be inside. Like, we're not going to really be spending that time.
Well, and that's, we talked about it with a couple of other like diet podcasts and the other podcasts. When you go back to nomadic people, there was no inside. So yes, there is the theory that humans hibernated the same way that animals hibernate. I forget the actual term for it, but it's a thing. But before we became civilized enough to build huts and everything else, we would have been exposed to extreme heat and extreme cold. So you look at things like hypothermia, you look at things like the frostbite, heat exposure, and then you've got people like Wim Hof, who has climbed Mount Everest in a t-shirt. No, a pair of shorts, not even a t-shirt. But it goes into our bodies should be able to thermoregulate without us dying. And this was actually a really interesting story. There was a lady in Minnesota. She was on her way to her friend's house. Her car died. She was less than a mile away. She thought she could make it. And she froze to death. She woke up the next day.
I saw that story.
Mm-hmm. I didn't think it was true. Actually, I Googled it and I researched around on it, and I found out it was 100% true.
I know. I thought it was like, no, that's not real.
Yeah. So when you think about that instance, you think about that with fish or frogs or, reptiles, and they do things like that. They can be frozen and then bounce back. Whereas this lady, her heart was completely stopped, and I don't remember what it was that made the doctor think to thaw her out slowly, but as they started to thaw her, they started to get a pulse. They hooked her up to the EKG, and they just started to continually thaw her, and no frostbite, no long-term damage. I think when she came to, she was blind, and then after about 2 or 3 hours, she was not blind anymore.
That is so crazy.
Mm-hmm. So,
I mean, that's fascinating.
Yeah, So when you think about it, when we strive to be comfortable. So going back to your point about we're not outside. There is no extreme heat. There is no extreme cold. When you look at the hormonal production, you think about people from Norway, Iceland, those northern areas. You look at in today's society, you look at like the world's strongest men, the CrossFit. Who won this year?
Oh, I have no idea.
Sigmund's daughter won this year. I can't remember her first name. I think I'll find out. I'll put it here. But when you look at that, they're from northern regions. They're getting exposed to more cold. Growth hormones going up. Their body's ability to recover and repair itself is going up. They grow bigger because they have more growth hormone. Their body is naturally wasting the inflammation, so they're able to get into better sleep, because the colder you are, the better you sleep, because the more your body's trying to generate heat, the more you're trying to conserve energy, so you sleep better, you shut down better. Again, the recovery aspect, if you're cold and you're outside, your body is literally squeezing out all the inflammation. Like instantly, you walked outside, inflammation is gone. If any of you guys are watching from up north, where are you from originally?
Technically Illinois, but we moved down here when I was like 6, so it doesn't count.
Oh, okay. So one of the things that I noticed, and I never put two and two together, but when I was in college, I would walk across campus. As most of you guys who've been to college or any school where everything's spread out, you walk across campus. Mm-hmm. When I would walk from the outside, which was sometimes -30, as fun as that sounds, to the inside now, right? Mm-hmm. Seriously, let's go freeze stuff in the car. You get snow in your car, and it would never leave. Like never. Ask David. He knows. I'm 99% sure he knows.
Yeah.
Like you would have like you know how you get like, well, you probably don't know. You get snow on the bottom of your shoe and it like falls off while you're driving. If you didn't take it out and throw it out, it would stay in there until spring. I have a picture somewhere. I can't find it. I've been looking for it for a while, of us in t-shirts and shorts on top of a snowbank that was as high as our apartment building.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah, I mean it's ridiculous. So that's the cold.
Yeah.
But when you would walk into like a building after that, you would start to feel tired. You would start to feel run down. You would start to feel like you were just like drained. And the reason why is because you were generating so much heat to get from point A to point B. Your body's not acclimated to it. So when you think about it from a conditioning standpoint, because I think I labeled it like I'm going to label it hyperthermic versus hypothermic conditioning. Mm-hmm. When you think about it, your body is not used to producing that much heat that fast. When you look at what brown fat does, it is in charge of wasting energy. There is the mitochondrial uncoupling, which is where the mitochondria pop. Basically.
Yep, that's what it is. It's the uncoupling proteins that force the. I just didn't want to get that sciencey.
Because when you think about it, though, from a heat wasting standpoint, this is how I think about it. You think about your mitochondria; it's pill-shaped, like that. And then basically the uncoupling proteins just pop it open, so it can just waste energy and generate heat. But your body's not conditioned to do that. So now all that heat is rushing out of your body. It's basically rushing into it. So you're basically destroying your stored glucose. Any stored glycogen, any blood glucose that's floating around, you have to waste through that. So it goes back to the shivering thing. Once those muscles start to contract, that's thousands of tiny contractions in seconds to keep you warm and alive. So if that's happening, you're wasting just mass amounts of energy. And then you feel that tired, that lethargic feeling. And what that was, which I didn't know what it was, is literally that. It's that heat generation, heat wasting. Same thing happens when you go swimming. You think about that cool water. Everyone gets out, and anyone who's got kids knows this exact thing, or you've been through it, you may just not have realized it. Kids get in the water for an hour, maybe 45 minutes. They get out of the water, and next thing you know, they're exhausted. They need a nap.
See, but I like that you mentioned like the kids needing a nap, because we had a pool, because we lived kind of in the middle of nowhere for a while. And we had a pool, and literally all summer, that's like my parents were like, go swim. Because literally when you get out of the pool, we were exhausted. Like me and my sister would be in the pool for several hours, and then, come inside, eat, and then we would just, that's it, gone. And it was awesome.
And that's it. We don't think about what does that. And what really kind of brought that to light is I watched the TED Talk that I told you about before. It was it was a TED Talk with Ray Cronise. And he was talking about how he was working for NASA, he had a desk job, and he's like, I couldn't figure out, because it was during the Olympics, and they were talking about how much Michael Phelps was eating, and he's like, I can't figure out how this guy's eating 15,000 calories a day, and I'm eating 15,000 calories a week, and he's shredded, and I'm not. And he goes into it, and he started researching more and more. And working for NASA, he knew about these vests that were actually created for keeping the astronauts cool, which was interesting to find out too, because I didn't know you needed a vest to keep them cool. I figured you would need to heat them, but apparently they don't need to be heated when they're in space.
Oh no, yeah, you need to be kept cool.
I didn't know that.
It's crazy. Talk to David if you're interested about that. One of our trainers here loves space, loves it. If you want to know anything about how that, it's not surprising. If you want to know anything about that, he'll be able to go into all kinds of crazy detail as far as why they need to be kept cool and stuff like that. It's pretty interesting. It'll be an interesting talk.
Okay, all right, I can live with that. That'd be
Yeah.
good. Pick his brain. I'm not surprised that he knows that though.
I know.
I'm hoping you're not watching this. Does he watch these? He better.
Yeah, he does.
Good. That's the right answer.
I kind of make him.
And here's the share plug, by the way. If you're watching this, just hit the share button while you're watching it.
Yes. What were we talking about? We got sidetracked.
Oh, the cool.
Astronauts.
The astronauts being cooled. And was it Hay? Is that what I said his name was? Dr. Hay?
Yes, Dr. Hayes.
Dr. Hayes. Actually down from UTSA, right down here, San Antonio. He developed a suit to keep them cold, and one of the things that this guy was noticing was when they would go through their testing and everything else, they would find these astronauts, even before they left our atmosphere, were basically losing a ton of weight from wearing these vests. And there were a lot of theories that he was throwing around, but one thing that he found that was a correlation between Michael Phelps and these people that were losing all this weight is the amount of cold that they were exposed to. So when you think about a competition temperature swimming pool, I think it's 76 degrees. So if you're in that water for an hour, 2 hours practicing, you're moving around, you're generating heat, which is literally being sucked out of you by the water. And then the heat that you're normally producing just to keep your body temperature steady is also being sucked out of you. So you're losing energy a ton of different ways. So the only way to keep your weight steady would be to eat an exorbitant amount. What he did is, I forget how he did the study, but what he found was if you spend, I think it's 15 minutes to an hour in the water, you can burn anywhere from 500 to 2,000 calories, assuming the water is 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So what he was finding is the longer you spend, the more calories you burn. If you were to run a marathon, it's 2,200 calories, give or take, depending on the person, depending on how fast they're moving and everything else. So you could run a marathon a day and burn, let's see, what does it come out to be, 5 pounds of fat a week. Or you can get in cool water for somewhere around a half hour a day and burn 5 pounds a week.
Holy cow.
Yeah. Because think about the energy expenditure.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
And then you look at recovery, central nervous system fatigue, everything else, it's not present.
Yeah.
So you are increasing browning of your fat, beiging of the fat. It's a thing, she knows. You're increasing the amount of uncoupled proteins in your brown fat. Mm-hmm. You are forcing your body to actually recover. You're getting rid of any inflammation, which will also slow down your recovery rate. And then you're just wasting calories, which is easier than running or exercising in any way, shape, or form. So
that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that makes sense. It's never something I really sat and just thought about. It's I've always known that the swimmers like Michael Phelps just eat insane. I love just looking at their meal plans. I'm how can you eat all this food in one day? It's crazy. Mm-hmm. But I mean, that makes total sense, really and truly, just taking a step back and understanding the underlying what your body is doing when you're in that kind of a situation. Because not only is he exercising, mm-hmm. but he's also in cold water, so his body is trying to maintain homeostasis. And then on top of that, thinking about being in the water, the fact that, cold, if you think about it in a science standpoint, cold technically does not exist. It's the lack of heat. And the fact that when you are hot, if you touch something and then you feel cool, it's because you are heating the object that you are touching, mm-hmm. and you are equilibrating? What's the word I'm looking up? Equalizing. I'm tired.
Interpreting.
What?
Not interpreting.
No, I mean equilibrium. But anyway.
Heat exchange?
Yes. I need to take a nap. Heat exchange. The heat exchange equalizes, the heat of the object that you're touching and the heat in your body. But if you think about that in the water, I mean, there's so much of it. Mm-hmm. Your body essentially is giving off this heat. The water is going to try to take in the heat to equalize what it is that you are, as well as with the water, but it's never going to do that because there's so much more water as compared to you. So your body is constantly putting off heat because the water is constantly, trying to, equalize you and the water. And it's crazy how much energy that takes, because in order to generate heat, your body needs to utilize ATP, which is your energy source in your body. So if you think about sugar is ultimately transformed into ATP for energy. Now, if you run out of energy, your body cannot maintain homeostasis, which in turn makes you exhausted, you needing to go in and eat something. So if you've been swimming, especially like you said with kids, spending that time in the pool, spending that time in the water, after a while, like, you're starving. Like, you're so hungry just because of all of the energy that you've just expended moving around, as well as trying to maintain your body temperature.
Yeah, and when you think about that, all that movement, and we think about calories all the time, we talk about calories. I wanted to make sure I got the exact definition because I don't want to mess it up in the slightest. 1 calorie is the amount of energy required to heat 1 gram of water 1 degree Celsius.
Yes.
So when you think about that, if you were in a pool, it obviously wouldn't be in a 50-gallon pool. You could be, it's a kiddie pool. But the amount of water that you have there, in order to heat all of that water 1 degree, you would have to waste, I don't know what that would come out to be, but that would be literally like thousands upon thousands of calories if you just stayed in there.
Yeah, to
heat the water.
Exactly. Which in that term, like, no, it's not going to happen.
You'd be bored, and you wouldn't actually heat the water. It wouldn't, because again, you'd be sucking the water out, sucking the heat out faster than you could generate enough.
Yeah.
That's where you would get hypothermia, in 50 gallons of water.
Yeah.
Science!
I
know, which would be even more embarrassing. So how did you get hypothermia? Well, I sat in a kiddie pool, and then, well, we're not going to talk about it.
I just have hypothermia.
Yeah, it's got hypothermia. It happened. It was like the way my bank account's set up. Like, I get hypothermia every 3 weeks. It's really awkward, but it's good. Yeah. So, but that's the biggest thing. But we don't get exposed to it. We avoid discomfort.
I hate it.
Yeah, we have thick jackets. We have central air. We have central heat. So why do you need to be cold? But that goes back to the question I asked before I left. Why do you need a thyroid anymore? Because we don't need to regulate our own temperatures. And this is where I would almost put money on it. They've never studied the two together that I know of. But I would say that thyroid function is decreasing because we don't use our thyroid.
I was gonna say that too when I was thinking about when you left. I was thinking about the thyroid use.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it makes me wonder as far as how many issues are coming across in terms of the fact that it's just not being used. It's not, when it comes down to hormone regulation and everything like that, especially with temperatures. I mean, we all sit in a comfortable either 60-something to 80 degrees inside all the time. I am going to absolutely attest to that because, like, if it's really hot outside, I am not outside. That is why I'm as light-colored as I am. I don't like outside because it's uncomfortable. And so it's like I don't think I have any issues with my thyroid. Actually, you know what? I did get the foundational test done, and I did have an issue with my T3, if I remember correctly. I need to go back and check.
Yeah. And it wouldn't surprise me because when you think about it, like you said, you're inside all the time.
Yeah.
There's no vitamin D unless you're taking it supplementally. Your thyroid is always baseline. If you get cold, you put a blanket on, you adjust the heat. If you're hot, you take the blanket off or you adjust the air. So you actually never have to use the gland itself for anything. It's just there. And then, of course, you think about all the things that are happening in your system that aren't happening because you're not getting exposed to heat, you're not getting exposed to cold. The amount of toxic buildup that can happen is a lot higher because when you think about what sweat is, it's a waste product in your system. So you're forcing your kidneys to work harder. You're forcing your liver to work harder. The weaver. So all those things are happening, and you're causing more work for your system. Yes, heating yourself is work, cooling yourself is work, but you're causing more work that doesn't necessarily have to happen.
Yeah, I actually need to go back and double check and see. But I've been wanting to, I think this will be a good segue to go ahead and touch into heat.
Yeah.
Therapy. But I've been wanting to utilize, I want to say the sun. I'm going to utilize the sun Spend time outside, sunbathing, but not for like extended periods of time because again, I'm like really light and I'll burn. But I don't know, like, what would you recommend? Because I know
It'll build up. I tell, and especially with your complexion. So if you've ever been to a tanning salon or anything like that, they have actually like a sun chart on there, which is really kind of cool. If you are like skin level 1, which is like really, really white, to skin level 5, which is really, really dark, they recommend like 5 minutes, just 5 minute exposure. So it doesn't matter how long you're out in the sun, the heat exposure, whether it's from sunlight, obviously we're in Texas, for those of you who don't know. So it's 90 some odd degrees today, I think. Again, yeah. We had a cold front, 76, for like 3 days. 4 days.
oh, it was beautiful. 3
Yeah,
days.
3 days.
That was gorgeous.
Yeah.
Ugh.
So by getting outside, you're outside for 5 minutes on your stomach, 5 minutes on your back. You're less likely to get burned. You're outside for 10 minutes. So you're going to be sweating like crazy, which is good. You're going to be detoxing the body, which is great. You're getting the vitamin D, which is phenomenal.
Which I need because I know that I have like a mild. It's not a crazy deficiency, but it's on the lower side for me. Same thing for the foundational test that I had done. My vitamin D was lower.
Oh yeah, and that's everybody, and that's the other part of it, because your vitamin D is in charge of 2,000 different functions in your system. So for your vitamin D to be low, everything else is going to be low. It's going to be just, instead of having, it's like your car, right before you get a tune-up or an oil change or whatever else. Once you get your oil change or you get a tune-up in your car, it runs different. It runs, even though it's the same car, it's just, they didn't touch any of the mechanics. It just runs different. Same thing in your body. When you think about the mood enhancement benefits of just being out in the sun, the cognitive enhancements, huge. And that's, again, that increase in vitamin D, which increases BDFN, which is brain-derived neurotropic factors, which decrease stress, increase your synaptic firing. It allows your body to actually process a lot of the information and relax as well. Because vitamin D is very relaxing. Again, if you've ever been outside in the heat for a little while, you start to notice you feel calmer. You're sweating out excess cortisol. You're sweating out all the toxins. They're not processing through your system. So your system actually starts to calm itself down. We talked about it with animals. Whenever you see extreme heat, even though it's hot outside and animals are covered in fur, they'll sunbathe. They will lay in the sun and they will just hang out there and enjoy the heat because they know it does amazing things for their system. And they're smarter than we are, to be honest.
I've always wondered, because, like, literally, there's, like, a beam. I have 3 cats. I love them. Whenever there's, like, a beam in the living room or something like that, 3 of them, all 3 of them, doot, doot, doot. I've always, like, I'm like, okay, whatever. I always just figured they liked to be warm, because, if it's cold in the house, they're in my lap.
Yeah.
But, I've never really considered, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
And that's why, like, you'll see it, like my dogs, like they'll literally lay there and puff and pant right either on the patio outside or right in the line of where the sunlight is. And it's always that way. Every animal you see, like you'll see animals that are out and you're like, oh, why don't you find some shelter? Why would I? I need this big glowing orb that keeps everything else alive to keep me alive.
Yeah, that's true. Something definitely I didn't think about. So as far as heat therapy, so we've touched on cold therapy and the benefits and stuff of that as far as energy expenditure. Would you be getting the same kind of thing with heat as well? Obviously you've got to maintain homeostasis, but what's the different benefits from heat therapy versus cold therapy?
With heat therapy, your body is forced to cool you down more. So when you think about your thyroid, it's going to help upregulate immune function, it's going to help you upregulate core temperature, it's going to help regulate a lot of other hormones in your system. When you're exposed to heat, it allows your thyroid to kind of calm down a little bit because it increases the rate at which you can detox your body and dump out anything that's building up in your fat cells, because your body will detox a fat cell right out of the skin.
You're good.
Okay.
Technically, okay, so for the time we got, I love how I just kind of stared at it for a minute.
I'm like,
we've got a timer. But yeah, for 15 minutes, set it for 15 minutes. Technically, you have like an extra 5, so it's like a little bit of leeway.
Okay. So what ends up happening is you start sweating, and after a few minutes, your body starts producing 2 different hormones. Dynorphin, which is the discomfort hormone, and you want to basically get out of the heat, and then endorphins. So you actually get an endorphin rush if you can sustain the high heat for a long period of time. Most people can't sustain the high heat, don't want to sustain the high heat. When you're in there, though, it actually increases if it's over 176 degrees, they say 73 degrees Celsius, but 176 degrees, it'll actually increase growth hormone output by, if you can last a whole hour, it's 16,000%. If you can just last 20 minutes, it's doubling your growth hormone output. So when you think about that from a recovery standpoint, longevity standpoint, you're literally repairing your body faster. The American Heart Association did a study with heart transplant patients, and what they found is being in the sauna for 20 to 30 minutes would allow them to actually rebuild their cardiovascular conditioning without putting so much stress on the body that it would run the risk of damaging the heart.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
That's fascinating.
That's why Isaac doesn't do cardio.
Yeah, oh, I know. He's very...
He's diehard, so am I. Like, I haven't been doing the sauna as much because I've been getting outside a lot more. The heat differential isn't the same, the growth hormone isn't the same, but infusing your body with the vitamin D is a lot better, in my opinion, because we are so deficient. But from a recovery standpoint, if you're in the sauna 3 days a week, your body will recover faster from workouts. Your detoxification goes through the roof. You actually secrete excess cortisol right out of your skin, so you're actually going to calm the central nervous system a lot more. The BDFN goes up. The exposure to extreme heat will actually cause your synapses to grow and fire faster. Normally a synapse takes about 7 days to work. So it'll grow in a day, and it takes 7 days for that synapse to actually start firing. It's blinking at me. Does it normally blink? I just noticed that.
Yeah, it's been blinking.
Oh, okay, never mind then.
I think we're just like extra aware of like what's going on in this room today.
So when you think about that, the synapse is instant. So when you think about like anything that you're doing, you actually will build a synapse, you build, a pathway for your brain. But when you have high levels of heat or high levels of cold, those synapses grow a lot faster, they fire a lot faster. Nerve rejuvenation actually happens faster as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So there's a lot to it. Mostly like from a stress standpoint, huge. Absolutely huge. From a sleep standpoint, also huge.
Cool.
In that, so Dr. Rhonda Patrick did a lot of studying with the sauna. She was actually going through I think it was her doctorate, and she injured her ankle. I don't know if she broke it or sprained it, whatever it was, but she couldn't work out. And what was happening was the gym was right across from her lab, and in the gym they had a sauna. So she got used to going in every day and doing her studies, and as a scientist you fail a lot. You fail more than you succeed because the goal is to find what succeeds, and in order to find what succeeds you have to find what doesn't work, and then of course you have to be able to duplicate it. So it may work today, but it may not work tomorrow because of X, Y, and Z. But what she was noticing is she would get in the sauna for about 20 minutes before she would go to work, and she was noticing that she had less stress, and she was noticing that she felt better, she was noticing her brain was functioning better. And after a while, she started doing those studies on herself, and it was all just small group studies on her, how she was feeling, what was going on. And I guess her husband got involved in the studies as well, and she was noticing there was a correlation between the two of them. And then they started doing bigger studies where they found that people were having the exposure. What they would find is their stress levels went down, their detoxification rates went up, their risk of heart health issues went down, cholesterol was fixed, C-reactive proteins went down, insulin sensitivity went up, and they started studying this. And then there was another doctor who did a 20-year study. His name was, where did you go? I'm going to completely screw this up. Jari Laurikkanen. He's Swedish.
We apologize for messing up your name.
Finnish. I am super sorry for that one. He's from Finland. Basically, they did a 20-year study of people. They didn't really monitor anything other than how much they were spending time in the sauna. The temperature was kept at 79 degrees Celsius, is what they found was to be the sweet spot where you would see the biggest change in growth hormone. If you can do multiple bouts, what he found is if you did 2 bouts of an hour in the sauna, you could actually increase your growth hormone massively. Endorphin production goes up, and then of course cold water immersion after the sauna increases your cardiac output but it also decreases the body, allows it to return to homeostasis, and then allow it to heat it or cool it itself based on what it needs. Yep. That's where the contrast therapies and things come from, where you go from high heat to extreme cold. What that does is it allows your body to actually waste any inflammation that's in there. So the obvious things you need to watch out for are dehydration, because you're wasting a lot of salt, you're wasting a lot of electrolytes just in general. In both the hot and the cold, you waste a lot of electrolytes because your body will either constrict all that water, send it out of your blood, send it basically through your circulatory system and out through urine if it's cold, and then if it's hot, it just wastes it right out of your skin. So, yeah, 27% decrease in cardiovascular-related mortality. 50% lower cardiovascular-related mortality than people who use the sauna only once a week. So if you're in there 4 times a week, 50% decrease in cardiovascular mortality risk.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it is, of course, dose dependent. So if you get in there once a week, yes, it's going to have some benefit. But if you're getting in there 3 or 4 times a week, depending on time, huge benefits.
So at least 20 minutes.
And then, of course, there's actually heat shock proteins. We talked about the cold shock proteins. The heat shock proteins will actually get rid of senescent cells faster because you're wasting them. And then we talked about before we started talking about this, we talked about the cells basically eating themselves. So, okay, dead cells. Sorry, back that up a little bit. Cells are eating each other. So when you think about,
all over the place. Oh my God.
I know, and it's worse. Like there's no I get going. So when you think about what's happening when you're in there, is your body will maintain. So since we're always in a state of homeostasis, your body wants to maintain all its cells. You don't have extreme heat. You don't have extreme cold. You have no reason to waste anything that may be dead or not functioning at optimal levels. So when you think about your cells are no different. We talked a lot about how carbs affect your body and how insulin keeps things alive, keeps them growing. When you think about that, if you have a constant flow of insulin, if your blood sugar regulation is off, you're actually going to be feeding cells that shouldn't be existing. So in your system, if you're exposed to those extreme heat or extreme cold, you have to waste anything that's not working optimally. So your cells will actually start to break themselves down if you're exposed to the cold and the heat, because you have to waste it to keep and maintain function. So your body wants to take care of survival more than anything else.
So proper apoptosis. Huh. So every cell in the body, it has a pre-programmed death, and that's called apoptosis. That is going to be how long that particular cell is going to be able to last. It knows when it's going to die. Usually what will happen is right around when it's supposed to happen, this is the way it's supposed to happen. It's going to send out signals to the body being like, hey, I'm going to die, just because it doesn't want to spill its contents into the body, because a lot of that is going to incorporate like the lysosomes, which have breakdown enzymes, and you don't want those breakdown enzymes in the body to break other things down. So the body will come, clean up the cell as long as it's working correctly. And then, a new cell will form and replace it, all that good, wonderful stuff. But that makes sense. As long as the body is working correctly, you're going to have the proper cell turnover. But if it's not, like you're saying, like with the insulin sensitivity and things like that, those things may not be cleaned up correctly. We're not wanting extra cell junk in the body, because that's going to cause inflammation, because it's not supposed to be there. But yeah, that's really cool as far as being able to make sure that everything is running smoothly.
Oh yeah, and you'll notice too, and this is where things get really weird. When you first start getting in the sauna, after about a week of being in there, your body starts to basically develop what's called hyperthermic conditioning. Yeah, hyperthermic conditioning. And then you end up being able to tolerate the heat longer, but after that first week, you start to notice like your sweat feels different, because you're wasting the cells. Like, it doesn't have that same like watery feel. It almost has like an oily feel to it. It goes back to being watery because the only thing I can come up with, and I haven't found anything that explains it, is that you're actually wasting out the excess hormones, excess oils in your skin, and then of course cells are coming out of your body, which is why if you've ever been outside for an extreme period of time, you notice that like crystallized salt that's on your system, on your skin, it's because you're actually sweating out things that are supposed to be leaving the body. And of course sodium.
And sodium.
Yeah.
Fascinating. It's interesting.
Yeah. So it comes down to, because we're creatures of comfort, we found ways to sustain how we live. But if you go back, I mean, was it? I can't can't remember the date of the air conditioning. I've looked this up multiple times. I want to say it was like 1920 is like when we first started using air conditioning. But if you think about it, so we're in San Antonio, Texas. People have been here since the 1800s, I believe. Pretty sure. So it's currently 96 degrees in October. So
Yay!
when you think about that, if people were here 100 years ago, they would have been sweating their backsides off. And you see the pictures of like the old school cities and villages, whatever else. These people were wearing like 3-piece suits, top hats, and everything else. So if that's the middle of the summer and that's what they're wearing, thermoregulation has to be through the roof. Their body has to be able to cool itself efficiently without being drenched in copious amounts of sweat.
Exactly.
So when you think about it, no one wants to sit in sweaty clothes all day. So if you're wearing a 3-piece suit and you're in 96-degree weather, there must have been something going on in your system that was allowing you to cool yourself. Then from there, you extrapolate it back further, much further, you would have had an animal pelt. And it's not perfectly sealed, it's not perfectly whatever. So that would have been enough to provide you enough insulation to get through the winter. Or obviously in the summer, you just take it off and you do what you got to do because you're just regulating heat. You're getting exposed to vitamin D. The fact that your cells are actually destroying themselves and reviving themselves the way that they should allows your system to run a lot smoother, so you're not wasting energy on things that should be gone. You're not causing inflammation by allowing those things that should be gone to just ooze into your bloodstream. And it's all the natural order that we don't follow anymore.
But that's interesting that you say that because Rode, another one of our trainers here, he used to work in a field, like a farm, like a watermelon field, with his family, and he said, "You just stop sweating. You stop sweating copiously." But he goes now and he sweats like crazy. But it's because he's like, I don't spend that time outside anymore. My body can't handle that heat like I used to. That when he was like, when I was a kid, I could spend all this time outside. And it's like, and I look back and I think the same thing because when I was a kid, I spent so much time outside.
Yeah.
So much time outside. I was in the pool. I was outside, playing with the animals. I didn't really spend that much time inside. We also lived in the middle of nowhere, so there wasn't anything else to do inside. It was more fun outside anyway.
Yeah.
But I never felt like the summers were that bad because we lived with my grandparents first when we moved here. They didn't use the air conditioner, maybe every now and then, but they didn't like to because they didn't like to spend money on it.
Yeah.
But as a kid, I never felt like the summers were that bad. But now, as an adult, it's like I'm like, geez, I don't ever remember complaining about the heat like I do now. But it makes me think it's just, as I got older, I spent more time inside, stopped playing outside and, cranked up the ACs when I lived on my own. I remember that was a fun, very first electric bill.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, can't do that.
Oh, so it can't be 65 all the time.
Not happening. But yeah, it's just, I don't feel like, looking back on it now, it makes me realize, my body is not efficient at regulating my body temperature.
Yeah. And that's one thing you find too, like I would be pressed to say that I haven't had this conversation before. I had a conversation with one of my clients. We were talking about it because it seems to be happening more and more frequently. You hear about these football players or soccer players that are passing away at summer practices. And I would almost put money on the fact that it has to do more with the hyperthermic conditioning than it does with the way that they're practicing or the way that they're training. Because we were talking about it, we didn't get really water breaks when we would play. Granted, we were in New York, but still, it's 86 degrees in New York and humid, and you're just hating your life. Or 96 degrees in San Antonio, Texas, hating your life. One of the guys that I train, he was down here. He's 70 years. Oh no, he's almost 80 years old. Almost 80 years old. He was playing football, and he's like, we didn't get water breaks. And I'd asked him, like, how many people had died? How many people did you hear about? He's like, I think in his entire high school career, there was maybe one instance on the news where somebody had passed away from heat. And now, unfortunately, it seems like one person at least per state is passing away from heat exposure during football practice. That could be population growth, that could be a number of kids playing, that could be a number of other variables in there. But it seems like the more time we spend inside, the less likely we are to be outside, the less likely we are to acclimate to that heat. And you can see it here, even when, because obviously I spend time in the sauna, and I'll watch people, and they're like, I go to pick up my daughter at school, that's my next little stop, and Like, you'll see all these parents that are, like, huddled together in the shade of the building versus being in the sun, because it's like,
Oh, that's me.
Yeah.
If there's shade, I'm walking in the shade.
yeah. And I'm like, just be over here. Like, and the difference between being healthy and I mean, I don't want to say healthy, maybe that's not the right word, but using your time more efficiently is the step between the shadow and the sunlight. Because if you were to spend, now granted, the recommended amount of sunlight you're supposed to get is 15 minutes per day, 75% of your skin exposed. That's supposed to be the optimum amount for vitamin D. Now, I'm standing there waiting for my daughter. I'm obviously in a t-shirt and pants, but I'm still absorbing some of that vitamin D. I'm still sweating a little bit, so I'm detoxing my body. You know, yeah, great. I don't want to detox with people I don't know.
That's uncomfortable.
I know. I'm detoxing with you. I don't know you well enough for this. No, I'm sweaty. You know what? You're not going to talk to me because I'm a sweaty mess. And I'm okay with that. And then, of course, you're getting the vitamin D in, and that you're actually using that time more efficiently. So we look at our time. We look at how much time we have for everything that we do. If you're using the sauna, you're increasing your rate of detoxification, which decreases inflammation, which increases the efficiency of your food and your nutrient uptake. If you're using the cold water, you know, if you're showering 5 minutes in a cold shower, you're going to burn maybe 200-300 extra calories just because you're trying to heat that body up. But that's 5 minutes in a cold shower. You're going to shower anyhow. You just make it more efficient. And if we can be more efficient with our time, we can actually get a lot more out of what we do, because all you're doing is hacking your body. That's a new thing. Biohacking, you know. There's actually, I can't remember his name, not Mark Sisson. He wasn't the one who did it. I can't remember who it was who coined the term biohacking. He's like, and now that we call it biohacking, everything, you know, hacking is the shortcuts. He's like, everything is biohacking. You know, it's getting warm, getting cold, getting outside, doing something that causes you to waste more energy. Maybe it was Mark Sisson. Either way. But he was talking about how, like, we get outside, you play Frisbee. Instead of going to the gym and working out, play Frisbee outside. Because you're going to get vitamin D. It's hot outside. You're going to get that same sweat. You're going to detox your body. You're going to feel better. You're going to decrease inflammation. And you got the extra work without actually working.
I mean, it's true.
So
I had an ex-boyfriend that I like. He would go and play disc golf, and I enjoyed playing disc golf. I thought it was awesome, but I enjoyed playing disc golf at 8 in the morning, not at 4 p.m. And that's when him and his friends would like to go. It was like 4 p.m. And no. My body could not handle it. I would, because it was in an open field, and there was no shade. Oh, I was miserable. I went out there once, and I was like, no, if you guys are going to go in the afternoons, I'm not going to go with you. But they enjoyed it, and they didn't have any issues. They didn't have, like, I was like this close to heat stroke. I was like, no, I've got to go inside. I can't do this. I'm getting a headache. I'm starting to like lose my vision. I can't do this. Yeah, I was like, no, I don't spend time outside. That's how.
So after this, you're gonna spend some time in the sauna.
I will be spending some time in the sauna.
And that's so we can actually use this as like a mini case study. So think about it. This one will go up next Friday. So by the time next Friday's goes out, we could actually see how your body is reacting to the outside temperature by spending a week in the sauna.
And I plan on it. Now that this, my hell week is over, I don't have as much to do, so my goals were to start exercising more frequently versus the none this whole last week. But like the here and there is what I've been doing, because I want to start exercising again and, you know, start utilizing those things. But I do want to incorporate the sauna back into that. So I plan on at least doing it 3 times this week, probably 4. But yeah, we'll see how I feel after that.
I would almost guarantee after a week, if you do it 4 times a week, by the time you get to that like 5th day and you just go out in the sun, get some sun, you'll feel amazing. It'll be like, oh, this isn't that bad. Because you're used to 176 degrees, and now you're going out to 96 degrees. It's like,
This isn't bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's anything else. You got to condition your body for it.
Awesome. Well, cool. Well, we'll have some fun stuff to talk about next week.
Yeah.
Well, this was exciting. I really enjoyed. This was something I actually had wanted to pick your brain about for a while now. So, cool. I'm excited.
Let me try not to get too sciencey on you guys. There's a lot more that we could have gone into.
Oh, there's a lot more.
We didn't talk about the gene expression with heat.
Yeah.
It's like, and I wanted to, but I'm like, nah, we could save that for later.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much for spending some time with us today, guys. Please make sure you like, share, and subscribe. We will be seeing you this next Friday. If you guys need anything, you know how to reach us. You're welcome to put a comment down below, or you can message us on Facebook. Or Instagram, because this
Or
is all on our
yeah, because I do
Instagrams.
put our Instagrams all on there, so you can send it to any one of us. Like I said, I'll put Isaac's on there too because I've been putting it on there, but Stephanie's will be right there, and then mine's usually right here. So
Awesome. Well, you guys have a wonderful week. I apologize I wasn't quite as enthusiastic, but this was great though. I'm really glad. I'm glad we had this particular talk. I like this
I
one.
think the information like overrides the enthusiasm, so they're good. Like we're good. I know, right?
Yay!
So-
Delusional enthusiasm. That's great.
always good enthusiasm.
All right. You guys have a wonderful day. Bye.
Thank you guys. Have a good one.
Thanks for checking us out. If you like this, go ahead, like it, share it, subscribe. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram.